everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're here to talk about episode 6 of Tower of God Season 2. Today's episode did a really great job of answering a question that I had been asking myself pretty much from the start of the season. How do you get a cinnamon roll of a character, like Bomb, to actually want to not only learn how to fight better, but also to use that skill to kill a political leader that he, individually, has no personal connection to in any way, shape, or form? It really goes against the kind of character that we saw him to be in Season 1, and to see him make such a gigantic leap, and mainly up until now to have seen his actions and to buy into the idea that he made that leap, made me question what it was that would make him actually do that, because by one's actions shall they be known, but knowing and understanding why people do things, understanding the rationale behind actions can be very important, because sometimes people's actions are solely their own, and sometimes while a person is responsible for their own actions, actions are influenced either slightly or heavily by others. And throughout the course of this episode, we definitely have it made clear to us that that is the case. We get to see a bit more of the red-haired woman that we saw was training Bomb based off of the ending of Season 1, and we get to see another guy who apparently was also involved in his training, and it was interesting seeing them interacting with the dark-haired flame girl when we picked up from where we were last week, and then eventually to see them interacting with some of the other teammates that Bomb has picked up throughout the story, and to see just how that went down. And it was really interesting what they did with this section of the story, because it really ties into something that I have found over time since I've studied a lot of different political leaders and different political and cultural regimes and stuff. I'm very interested in that sort of thing when I'm not engaging with stories and media. So what it really brought home, and I thought they did a good job at, is the idea that even when somebody believes in something and acts on something that you might think is terrible, a reality that many people overlook is that a person who does that kind of stuff isn't necessarily like that at every single moment of the day. It can be very easy to dehumanize people and to think that somebody who does awful things that you find vile and yucky and gross is going to just be nothing but that yucky, gross vileness. And this is far more important, in my opinion, in storytelling than it is in real life. I mean, when somebody does something absolutely reprehensible in real life, because it actually impacts living people and has real-world consequences, we must act, especially when they do things that are just generally considered inherently wrong regardless of culture. Something I've really kind of concluded for myself as I've aged and stuff is the idea that there are things that are generally considered wrong regardless of where you are, and it tends to be that those sort of things can be relatively straightforward to find and to deal with. In this situation, like with this whole Fug thing, where they would potentially be killing people, or when we find out what they've been up to with regard to Bomb, yeah, that kind of stuff is just no. But on the individual level, the individual members that are talking, especially when the girl with the glasses and the little girl are there, those two have no motivation or logical reason to harm either of them. And it was good to see that they were able to just have a normal conversation, that they had food, all that sort of thing, because it made sure that things didn't just turn into a caricature, and that was actually very mature and refreshing. On the other hand, we do eventually find out just how bad, dangerous, and serious this Fug situation is. And we also find out through that discovery just how distinct and unique Bomb is as a character, and that although he is doing things that would definitely not sit right with me in a real world context, that the character that we liked from the first season is not so much dead in a he chose of his own volition solely on his own to distance himself from that behavior, but rather that situations that people have thrust upon him have caused that to happen. And it's exceedingly tragic, because what we find out is that the people who found him after the situation where Rachel pushed him ended up telling him they want him to become a slayer, they want him to kill the king, they want him to do this, they want him to do that, and they're going to train him to do that. And he is like, I just don't know if I want to do it, until they finally tell him, you are going to do it, and if you don't do it, we are going to systematically slaughter every one of your friends one by one. For Baum, that would be a nightmare. Not only because Baum is generally a kind and good-hearted person, especially the Baum that we were seeing the flashback about at that point, but also when you recognize that Baum's history is that he spent the majority of his formative years being trapped inside of that cave and having no contact, and then having solely Rachel as contact. The idea of people dying because of him, or people he cares about dying in general, is something he has witnessed. Like, he saw certain people during the first season have bad things happen to them, and that he is vehemently opposed to, so of course he ultimately agrees. Now, one thing I will say is that these people are playing a very dangerous game. They are playing with fire, and I sincerely hope that the people who have literally blackmailed him, not necessarily the two that trained him, because they seem conflicted, at least to an extent, about his own individuality. But we'll have to see how their characters develop and how I feel about them long term. But that administrator with the blonde hair from season 1, oh honey, I want that man to pay, and I want Baum to be the one to do it, because holy crap, dude, what he has set up here is absolutely despicable and wrong on every conceivable level possible. First off, he hasn't even waited till the point where he got what he wanted politically to show that when somebody wins politically, they usually aren't necessarily better than the person that they've defeated, but rather just evil in a different way. But like, he hasn't even gotten to that point and he's already doing stuff like this. That sets off alarm bells in my ears as to how this will go down if it ends up being successful, and if these people are actually allowed to obtain power. Another thing that I really liked in this particular episode is the way that Ja Wangnan actually finds this stuff out about Baum and is actually like reacting to it, and how it has shifted his personality and how he's thinking about everything, and the angle and level of intensity that he has toward the tests. Now that he knows that every time a test is failed for any reason, that one of Baum's friends is being killed. Because whether he openly admits it to himself or not, I think that Ja Wangnan is starting to admire Baum, and that he's starting to like him a bit more and stuff. And I think that at the end of the day, we're going to reach a point where he's going to feel that he wants to be friends with Baum as well. He even says in the episode, essentially, that if he was one of Baum's friends, he wouldn't object to the possibility of dying, that friendship would be worth it. And I thought that was really beautiful. We also get an interesting moment where the little girl actually gets a moment in the spotlight, and she's still in there insofar as it goes when we leave the episode, because she's actually the only person able to fit into this hole to go after this little pig that has a flower on its back that they're trying to get for a test. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes, because I've been questioning for quite a while now how they would actually make sure that the little girl actually had an interesting and important role in the story. And while this is super dangerous, this whole world is super dangerous. And seeing that they're making sure to utilize different characters is really cool. I also like the fact that the guy who has the devil in his arm and Prince were working together dealing with a situation. And actually seeing the two of them work together and be decent and civil for the most part, as opposed to being at each other's throats, was really cool. I think that we're seeing further strengthenings of various character dynamics, and that's really fun. I like seeing that kind of shifting in characters. It's something, especially in a show like this, where you don't necessarily know how much you can trust somebody from episode to episode and from scene to scene, is really interesting. But overall, I thought this was a really good episode. I think that there was a lot of really unique and interesting and fun things that were going down. I think that it was definitely a strong episode with a lot that was going on. The final thing I want to touch on just quickly is the ending. It looks like we are up against somebody, and I wonder what the deal with this is. There are 3 possibilities, and as somebody who only watches the anime, I'm not sure which we're getting here. Option 1 is that this man was inside of this creature of his own volition without any outside involvement, and our heroes are unlucky. Option 2 is that this man was intentionally placed in here by the administrators, and he is making shit up, and he is just there to make the test more difficult. Or my personal favorite is option 3, that this man has somehow been sent by Fug to make the test more difficult for Bomb, because all of the frickin' tests from his perspective are likely continual training exercises, and they want him to end up fighting this guy, because whenever Bomb fights somebody, he learns new moves, because he has like, some people have like a photogenic mind. They can remember faces and images and stuff. Bomb has like photogenic skill learning, which is incredible, and which is one of the big reasons, outside of being an outsider, that Fug wants him so badly. So they are probably still hypothetically training him to an extent, and they obviously want him to continue passing these tests because they are moving him closer to his ultimate goal. So he is definitely in a tight spot in this situation, because he can't just say, nah, I don't want to fight you, man. He has to fight this guy, because otherwise somebody will die. And with the kind of character that he is, there's little doubt that he would view this as being on his personal conscience. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this episode, but I'd love to know what you guys are thinking, so drop a comment below and let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. See you later. Bye!